Hello, welcome back. So today's subject matter for the principles of design, which is kind of funny, is movement, which is exactly what didn't happen today this morning on my drive here. Uh, Almost 2 hours to get here, what usually takes 20 minutes. Like I literally just got here. I left at 8 in the morning. Crazy. So that's kind of a funny part, talking about movement. And today I was not moving at all. So of course I'm going to go over movement and design and how it's used and expressive properties and what it can do for graphic design and in making an intriguing design. We know the standard movement research part where you find three examples: a book cover, an album cover, and a poster, a movie poster. Then we have our movement project, which is going to be creating 6 compositions using different means to create movement within little compositions. And then the project B part 2 rough drafts, which is exactly the same as the rough drafts for the poster. It's a refined version, like you sketch things out and you're like, I think I want it here, I think I want it here, I think I want it here. And then now you're like, okay, let's make sure, okay, I got everything right. I kind of like, this is where I want this box, this box, this box. Before we go into digital. That way we just have all our decisions made and we're ready to roll. So with that said, and just so I don't end up repeating myself too much, let's jump in and check out movement in design. All right, I'm gonna zoom in. Literally, like I need a second. Like I don't even have all my things out because that's how long it took to get in. All right. Movement in the context of design refers to a visual flow. I talk about that a lot, and I'm always talking, like we deal with hierarchy and flow and getting people to look where we want, when we want to. It can be movement, but we can also do expressive movement, which can make a piece like super dynamic. You could have just a really generic way to say it is like you can have a picture of a vehicle, say it like a sports car, just do a sports car or motorcycle, sitting there, or you could have a picture of a motorcycle that's moving. And the moving one is far more dynamic and probably gets our hearts and our minds going a little bit more because we're like, oh yeah, look, I would say like always going fast is great, but like you get that movement and you're like, oh yeah, I feel like I'm part of that. And so it's a great way to look at that. And then so in design, we can add movement into the design. It doesn't always have to be running. It doesn't have to deal with cars all the time or anything like that. But we can add dynamic movement and flow. I guess maybe that's a better word. I wish maybe instead of movement, it should be flow. That you can have like beautiful ribbons going through your piece and it just creates flow and movement. And it can look really, really great. Since we are in the area of principles, we know that lines and direction play a significant role in the creative movement. It's all about how do you make the lines? Are they, and where's it going to? We have a general, when you look at stuff, we have a general thought of, say, if I underline something, we're fine with that, right? But if I have a subject matter and over here I do something and I'm like, our mind is like, where is this going? Like I want to follow the movement, and that could be like a thick line or whatever. But here's the base one, an arrow. I want to follow that. So as it says here, lines can lead a viewer's eye from one point to another, creating a sense of flow. And you're going to be doing that in your assignment, your project. And it is just like the major and kind of like easiest baseline way to do it. It is all about just line, like I can get a bunch of lines together and it creates like movement. There's like, think of also like some optical illusions and stuff like that work really good with that. Oh, I can't move over more. I'll do it down here. If we just do, like a bunch of diagonal lines, feel far more like they're moving than if I was just to do a bunch of vertical lines. You know what I mean? Like this is, you're like, your mind creates this like, why is this, why are they moving to the, you know, to the right instead of just straight up and down? Here it just looks like a bunch of trees. Here you think like, oh, is something's happening? And so it's very different way to think about it. And yeah, a diagonal line can make all the difference in a piece if you're just going from verticals to a diagonal. There's great work, Bauhaus, standardized Bauhaus, and you'll learn about this in the art history class, is they kind of started doing this stuff, and this is, you know, decades and decades ago, on diagonals, 45 degrees. Like they set up, you know, their artboard like this, but then all their design was like done like this in 45-degree angles across the piece. And it makes it so much more enjoyable to look at and dynamic to look at. We can move into pattern and repetition. And that will be coming up in a week or two. Let me check. You are just behind. Oh, I can't check it now. All right, it's coming up. We're doing pattern and repetition is coming up fairly recently. But yeah, that's another one. Repeating elements show movement. If I have, right? Like if these were all circles, we want to like, oh, what's the circle? What's the standard? I got, you know, and then I do one here. You know, like little footprint. It's a pattern of a design element put in a special orientation, a repeating pattern of these footsteps that gets our eye to go and flow and be like, oh, I'm moving from here to there. I'm following the subject matter. Even if there's no subject matter to follow, we get that from, you know, the pattern that's created, the pattern here that's created on diagonals as well. So many different ways to look at this. Gradients. Gradients have that softer version of getting us to view from one side to another, but it's very much, I would say, like, think of landscape paintings when it goes from dark sky at the top to light sky at the horizon. And that's just a standardized way of looking, because up high, if you're looking up high direct, there's less atmosphere that is refracting light than there is toward the horizon. And so it's darker colors at the top, and it goes and it gradiates down. But we also have a tendency to want to look toward that horizon as well. And so you can use certain things like that to get people to look in certain areas if it's dark to light and a lot of information. Like you have this tendency to just gradually look there along that system. Typography. This is the most, like, super high important as a design element, but just in typography in general. So if you're in typography right now, you're learning about text flow and how everything should look and where you put hopefully returns and stopping people and guiding people to read correctly. You'll get me later on in your career here at MATC, and I get very into you're very into. You will hear me talk about, like, if you have hyphens, I'm always like, remove the hyphens. If you have lines that are too long, or if you have a line that ends early, like, and people are reading across, and then one ends early, and then this one's really long, and I'll be like, why? You have, go back. Gap is too much. It confuses people, and it breaks the flow of how we read. The last one that you'll hear me about, and I hope you never have to hear me about, is that final word down here, all alone. It's called a widow, which, just like the text flow, you're like reading, and it's all great, and then guides viewer in a reading path. Last words, all alone, single out on a single line. It disrupts the flow of how we read. And you are visual communicators. That is the base of what graphic design is communicating. So we have the power, and it is our job to make whatever we do for our client as legible and readable as possible, and as enjoyable to read as possible. I mean, there's some things I will say. Well, no, it's even enjoyable. If you look up, David Carson. Remember, it was one of those first design projects that you had, the design practice project. He does what's called grunge design. He's all over the place, but there is a flow and there's a way to read his work. It's intriguing. It's hard. It's not just like reading a paragraph, but it can also be done in a more like crazy grunge sort of way. So look that up as well if you have, or look back at that project. I have a couple pieces. I didn't put his craziest work into that piece simply because I wanted to show a big range of what he does. But if you look at a magazine called Raygun that used to be out, that he was editor and creative director on, is really cool to look at. Of course, which I said this in the beginning, implied motion. And there are some awesome ones over here that just truly like this one. I'm going to come back to it, but like that's all I want to say about it. It's like so great. It's implied motion. So again, nothing's moving. We don't need to add blur lines. We don't need to add necessarily extra what's a big way, like overly do it. I'm trying to think of the best way. There's like times that like, oh, if I blur it, I'm gonna look like it's moving. Or but what if I just do something different and it's simpler? But implied motion can really change the way we look at things. The ones I have in here, I don't think there's a single blurred object in my examples, and that proves that implied motion is sometimes cooler to look at and more interesting to look at in the way that it's designed, rather than doing like a quick shot when everything's blurry and you're like, that's how I'm implying motion is only blur. No, it is through, a lot of it can be through everything we've talked about here: lines and direction, pattern and repetition, some color gradients, and typography and flow. All right. Hierarchy and focal points. This is going to be part of your assignment. I believe it is where I'm going to have you, there's like a number 1 point and a number 2 point. And I want you to do a little design composition that helps direct the eye from one area to another. And I did it with a flow. I did it something, in my example, I have something similar to this. It's a big flow, but you follow from biggest to smallest. It's a horizon thing. It's a perspective thing that we are naturally accustomed to, of perspective. It's not that we are taught perspective, but when you look around in real life, like I'm sitting in a giant room, and if I were to draw the room, I would start wide in the back and it narrows at the front. Does it really narrow at the front? No, but that's just my perspective of the way I look with two eyes, bifocal vision, not the fact that I have bifocals on, but bifocal vision. And then there's a convergence of a point within the distance. So that's how I do it. But hierarchy and focal points. So this is where we want to create and make sure people are looking. I want you to look at this point, and then I want you to look over here next. And then I want you to look over here third and end up looking over here fourth. And we can do that. We can move the eye through the design piece to get people to specifically look where we want them to look, when we want them to look. And that's the big key. Like, you can really direct the eye a lot. When you get into bigger and more complicated design pieces, it becomes about like hierarchy. How do I get people to look where I want them to look each and every time? And then after a while, it just becomes second nature. Or when you're designing, you don't think about it. So we do this whole for you all, it's 8 weeks. It's actually 16 weeks. We just double it up for the 8-week class. All these things aren't thought about. Like, I don't sit down and think necessarily consciously about all of the parts that we talked about when I'm designing, but there are times then where I'm like, okay, the hierarchy, just by looking at what the client is asking for, I can say like, okay, this is most important, this is second most important, this is third most important. I need to make sure that when a person reads it and they flow through it and they read across or up or down, however I have it designed, that's how it's going to work. And use of space, the distribution of elements within the component. You'll see this. The very first piece I'm going to show you. It's the distribution. No, it'll be the fourth one. We can fool people. Like I'll just do it right here. Is again, it's a little dots. So say I have a square here, and then I do a lot of dots here, right? What happens if this was a composition in use of space? It's more condensed here, which we then tend to want to bring our eye to. Like over here, it's really spaced out. And then we move and like, oh, what's over here? And then it's guiding us to see this one thing. So we're using the space to trick the eye. Be like, well, normally if there's just a few things, but if there's more of it, I tend to want to look there. And it's crazy, you know, like again, the psychology built into graphic design is great. It's amazing. It's so fun to know that like you have a lot of influence on how people see things, how they react to design, how they react to posters and all that kind of stuff. There is a reason why people, you know, Toulouse-Lautrec, if I may say that name, did posters, the French posters of Toulouse-Lautrec. It got to a point that his posters were so amazing in what they did, people were would steal them from the walls that they were put up, that they would have to put a stamp on them saying, if you stole this and we found it in your house, you could be arrested. You know, like, so that's where I'm talking about, like the people see our work and can be so moved by it that they want to have it. And it just depends on how we work, and we combine all our elements and design elements and principles, and we can get that to happen. All right, movement here. Check this out. Same pattern, I've looked at this a lot. All these fish down here are the same fish. It's the same exact fish, just repeated more and more. These ones aren't. These ones have a little bit more flow. But what are they doing to change the way we're looking at it? Well, it's starting big, and it's bringing us in, down and around and up. You know, so it's just a pattern. It's a pattern of a single shape. The shape happens to resemble a fish. Is it a fish? No. It's a representation of a fish repeated in such a way, you know, smaller and smaller and directionally, that we get this sense of movement. There's no movement there. Nothing's happening here. You know, like that's just the best way to say it. Like nothing's moving on this page, but we get such a big sense of movement. And then even in this curve, this really, you know, like if it was probably the same fish, and that's why they did it, and they just put that same, you know, like kind of teardrop shape, it wouldn't be the same. But what they did is they really added, like, now, like as a group comes together, like you get so psychological on this, like what they're portraying is as the group comes together, they get more movement is involved and blah, blah. And you know what, the designer wasn't thinking anything about that. They're like, oh, you know what we should do? We should kind of like make these two separate from the rest, creating a different pattern system. And then these two stand out a little bit more in conjunction, you know, within the poster as a whole. So we're going to make these two a little bit more expressive. And it could be too, like, are these fish, are these whales? There's a little bit of a difference in maybe the fin style, the fin structure, but I don't know for sure. Movement and typography. All right, let's see if I can get this moved over. There we go. Get that centered up a little bit better. This is very similar to what I was talking about when it came to the Bauhaus movement, and when you read about the Bauhaus, or heck, you could do, well, no, I said a designer for the pamphlet. This has so much movement. It's because it's on these 45. We have this, you get in this like, oh, is it falling? Is it falling? Is this going to tumble down? Is it going to fall? And so it's all that's needed in this piece is to create that movement and make it a far more interesting piece is just turning everything on a 45-degree angle. Now, as a fun proof for this, I'm going to grab this piece, take a little screenshot. Oh, I could just put it in my drawing. Oh, that's for you guys. Layers, let's pop up a layer, file, place embed. Now I go to my desktop, place. All right, so this is our piece. I'm just gonna grab the corner. I'm gonna hold down Shift, so it turns it 45. Oh, not quite. Oh, maybe it wasn't exactly 45. But when we look at it in this format, it is not as movement orientated as it was in the other format. This is just kind of looks, boring and plain. It's just like, to me, it's stagnant. It's just 90 degrees, blah, 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 blah. Like, oh, it's kind of cool. It looks good. I like it. But all they did was turn it, and then they broke the edge on 3 sides, but not one. And so it's coming in, and it's got these angles, and things are falling and drifting. Just changes the entire look. So you go from here. It doesn't happen. To there. Complete difference. 2 different designs. Something I should make students do is like change your outlook on that. All right. This one is, to me, identical to this one. In general, you can count the repeating. Back leg, pants, back leg pants. They just switched the back leg here. It's the same back leg pants, back leg pants. Arms, 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 arms. It's a pattern. The person, the shapes that we are associating as to be a representation of a person is a person in motion. And the crazy part is, like, this was brilliantly done here, is that the fact that, like, the person's looking at Team Olympique here. So they're guiding us down. So there's that movement right there. We're looking, down here. But this person is basically this person is this person. And this is the only one that's different because this is now the winning move. But all of this, one, the diagonal, just like we saw up here. And I would say, like, the expressive limbs or the shapes that we have going here that allow us to feel like they're runners, that they're going across the page. But look, in general, it's a very flat design. There's no blur, there's no craziness happening. It is what it is. But it creates a ton of movement with something relatively very, very simple. And so it doesn't take much to fool that eyeball. This one, what else can I say? We got it coming down. We're coming down. We're driving the car. I love that we leave, and then there's a hidden area, and then we come back up, and we cross like a horizon threshold. I don't know why I drew that one looking at the wrong. So there's a horizon threshold that, one, we're coming down and then going up and coming around the bend. There's nothing on this page, and it's a static picture of a car done at a great angle. Like the illustrators at this time were really great at kind of doing some of this stuff that would be hard to do now. even with like photography, you'd have to really do that right. But it's literally a black line with a white line in the middle of it. And it's fooling us into thinking like it's a road and that there's movement and it's going, you know, coming from far away to out to below to above and around. And it's all just lines. It's lines and a static picture of a vehicle. They didn't do like this. You know, like the old time cartoony, you know, like I'll make movement lines on it. But you can think of the movement lines done in old cartoons as helping develop that process there. So another good one. But yeah, nothing else needed. It's just a single line. It's so simple. The great part about these two is it's very hard. We want to always do so much more. We have this ability. We have our creative minds, and we want to like, what if I had this? What if I do this? What if I had this? And here's a great example of less is more. One line, one shape, another line, and a picture of a car. It's really all it is. You know, it's basic elements, but in the end are very exciting to look at and give us a lot of movement and a lot of information. But there's not a lot to it. It is just, you know, it is what it is. They didn't have to add. They didn't like, oh, well, we're going to add trees and stuff and then shrubbery and like fill the space with anything, you know, all this stuff because we want it to look like a farmland or, you know, and then we put a house out here. None of that happens. It's not needed because I want to draw the eye from off the page and have some fun and end up here so the person knows that they're looking at the Austin 850 and that it's lively. And that, you know, and this is the biggest, blackest area of the page too. So that helps with it as well. Finally, the last one. This is like the one I showed you guys earlier. This is fish, but with people, you know, and it's these people are almost the exact same as these people. And here they're condensed and they're moving one way. Here they're milling about, but all going to Malaga scene. Yes, in 2010. But it's so cute and it's so neat in the way that they did it. What are we doing? We're using the space to get people to look from everywhere else to here, you know? And I actually have a tendency, like I spend a lot of time out here looking at the people and I know the information is here. But that's all we need to know. Like, and then you can spend time looking around. Oh, that guy's got a mohawk. You can spend time out here knowing that you will get to the information because that's everybody is going to where the information is. And we're creating that movement. We're creating that sense of hierarchy of telling people this is where I want you to go. This is where I want you to look. I want you to look where all the people are going. It's pretty great. So movement and design can be used in so many ways. It's probably very underutilized because we always think like it should only be used for cars and motorcycles and stuff like that. So there is our rundown of movement in design. There you go. Let's talk about movement research, book cover, movie poster, album cover. Please make sure, and I think everybody is doing a very great job with these, making sure things are centered, look great, lined up, aligned, everything. You start doing that now, it becomes second nature. And then you don't have to worry about in the future of people saying like, why is everything a little bit off? So everybody seems to be doing a very good job with that. Thank you very much. Keep up the excellent work. Movement project. Oh, good, I have it open. Oh, I don't have it. Okay, this is not the one. Never mind what I said way earlier in the classroom. I misspoke about what we're doing. Movement. I want you to do 2 compositions that incorporate line. Let's just double check this. Line, pattern, typography. All right, good. I had a misprint that a student, after like a year, a student finally found a little mistake I had. So you're going to do 2 compositions that use line to show movement within the square, you know, line. Pattern, I wanted like, how do we get pattern to show us movement? And then typography. How do we move with typography? This one, probably everybody's like, oh, it's gonna be super hard. It's not as hard as you think. It's basically reading. You're guiding the eye. But I don't want plain ones. Like, I want you guys to push yourselves and do some really rad work, and you know, and push your minds and what you can design. But so that's what we need to do here. 2 line, 2 pattern, 2 typography versions. Finally, finally for projects, and then I'll talk about next week. Rough drafts. So this is the booklet, and I think maybe I will just talk in generalizations that you need to understand how the booklet pamphlet works. And anybody who's maybe slightly confused, grab a piece of paper. It doesn't even have to be a full-on piece of paper. It can be a Post-it note. Fold it in half. All right? And then look at that. So when you fold it in half and you open it like a book that we do in the Western countries, the opening is on the right-hand side. And so your cover is on the front, and you can even write a seat. And I do this. I promise you all, I do this. Let's go to Photoshop so I can draw it out. I promise you, I do draw. I do this every time, because this doesn't even help me. Like, if you kind of do it like a perspective thing, and like, here it is, and so this is the cover. Then the back cover is here, and then page 1 is hidden and page 2 is there. But that's what we're looking at. And so I want you to make sure that when I show you those designs, that this is the cover and this is the back cover, that it's correct. Because when it's folded in half, this goes around the back. And then when you open it up in the middle, this is page 1 and this is page 2. So when you're holding it, you would generally hold it. You'd see the cover. Then you would open it to 2 pages. And then you close it to the back cover. Now, you may, like, some people may be rolling their eyes, but like, it gets confusing when you start adding a 5th page or a 6th page or 7, and then you got to really like narrow it down and be like, okay, which page is ending up where, and how is it bound? And if it's you probably learn it in InDesign, but then like the page order is actually not correct when you design it. The page order is different that for when it's printed, because if you have a bunch of pages, so what's the best way? Say we had that many pages, so it's cover, back cover, and then it's actually page 1 is normal, page 2 is on a different sheet, page 2 jumps to here, page 3 is here, page 4 is here, and then the back cover. So that would mean, like, in just a really rudimentary way, then page 1 and page 4 are next to each other because you have an inset of page 2 and 3, but 2 and 3 would just be a single piece. This would be if you could see both sides at once. So it does get a little bit crazy, and that's why it's really good to figure this out and know it. So make sure when you're doing your final rough draft, and I want you to be like really like good on it, and be like, I know the pictures I have, I know the images I have, you know, like I think I talked about it. Like I'm going to do a circle. I'm going to do a name in the name, and the person's going to be in here. Like I have a picture and I know it's available. This is going to be the site, and it's going to show big artwork in the background. I know I want it, and I know the artwork that I have already. And this is where we go into like any typing information, just like in the poster. I want to know about it. I want to know like, what are you adding? What fonts are you going to use? All that kind of fun stuff in the design. How are you going to use it? So then, like this is the cover, this is the back cover. And then my 2 inside pages are here, and it reads from 1 to 2. And I know like I should start it here, and like, this is where it starts, and then this is where it ends, and you end with, blah, 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 blah. So, but what I want, these are sketches. These were just quickly done to show you what I mean, but I want kind of to be able to look at it and know, like, exactly where every piece is going. Everything is going to be drawing wise, because then in 2 weeks, we're going to drop these. You're going to drop those drawings into the digital program and then place all your stuff on top of it. Very similar, almost exact, just like I did for those design practices. That's why I did those design practices the way I did them. Is like, that's what you do. You take your little sketch, your little drawing that got approved by the client, me, the client, or like when you're later on in life, and they're like, yep, that looks good. I like the layout. I like everything that's going on. Let's see the next steps. Boom, you put it in, you drop it in, and then you show the client, be like, here, I put everything in. And it's lined up just like we talked about in that drawing. How does it look? And then they'll make changes from there. So that is what we need to do for in 2 weeks. Now I'm going to double check everything. I ran into some items, but everything is due 12/3. So next week we are not meeting. I will be here for anybody that needs me on Tuesday. I will actually be on campus taking care of some other stuff, but we will not have a lecture. That's when this class, I don't know if you remember, it started and we had like a break, and I was like, no, I'm going to pre-record. It's going to be all set up for you. Do that. That's so you can have all next week off. I don't add in anything. So it's the same timeline. It's just there's a Sunday through a Saturday that's added in there for your enjoyment, to hopefully lessen some stuff. If you got late work, get it in. Everything's opened up. Take care of it. Spend some time with your family on Thanksgiving, and know just like, okay, this stuff is due again on Tuesday, but in 2 weeks, not Tuesday next week. So enjoy that time. Get it in early if you want. Oh, and please, 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 I will be around. So I don't want you to think that I'm not going to be around. Midweek review. Please use it. Use it a bunch. I'll be checking still like almost every day. It might get a little light on some days, I won't be able to check on Saturday. This week, Saturday, I have a big event. I won't be able to check, but I'll check again on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I'm not going to check on Thursday. It's Thanksgiving. I won't check on Friday. I know that because it's a special day within our family. So I'm around. So don't be like, oh, it's a whole week and he won't be around. I will be around. Use the midweek review, turn things in, get them done. Just get it done, and then be like, yes, I have a week where I don't have to work on anything because I, nailed it. I got it done, got it turned in. I'm done. I'm going to go sit back, relax, sit on the couch and do nothing, because design elements and principles, those assignments are done. So any questions, comments, or concerns? All right. Well, like I said, I'm around. We're just not meeting next week. I will send you a note next week about that as well, just reminding you like, hey, don't log in. Don't worry. I'm here, but you don't need to log in. I will talk to you on discussion boards, but if I don't talk to you on discussion boards, have a great little break. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, and I will see you for sure, or you'll hear from me on December 3rd. And then we only have 2 weeks left, and then we're done. So, all right, take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.